The frog, widely known for singing
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. Hello, my ragtime gal.
is known as Michigan J. Frog, and he debuted in One Froggy Evening, an American Technicolor animated musical short film, written by Michael Maltese and directed by Chuck Jones, with musical direction by Milt Franklin. The short was released on December 31st, 1955, as part of Warner Bros. Merry Melodies series of cartoons. In 1994, it was voted number 5 of the 50 greatest cartoons of all time by members of the animation field. In 2003, the Library of Congress deemed it culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant, and it was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry. Now let's go over some notes before we dive into the plot. As this is a merry melody, the cartoon has no spoken dialogue except for the vocals. The frog's musical vocals are provided by singer and bandleader Bill Roberts. The frog had no name when the cartoon was made, but Chuck Jones later named him Michigan Frog after the song The Michigan Rag, which was written for the cartoon.
Everybody do the Michigan rag. Everybody likes the Michigan rag.
Jones and his animation team studied real-life frogs in order to achieve the successful transition from an ordinary frog to a high-stepping entertainer. The character became the mascot of the WB television network in the 90s. In a clip shown on DVD specials for the Looney Tunes Golden Collection, Jones states that he started calling the character Michigan Frog in the 1970s. But during an interview with Jay Cox, Jones decided to adopt J as the frog's middle initial after the interviewer's name. Those series of events are how we got the character's name, Michigan J. Frog. The short begins with a mid-1950s construction worker involved with the demolition of the J.C. Wilbur building. He pries off the top of a cornerstone and finds a metal box within. The unnamed man opens the box and finds a living frog inside, along with a commemorative document dated April 16, 1892. The frog then dons a top hat and cane, and after the frog suddenly performs a musical number on the spot, the man seizes the opportunity to use the frog's anthropomorphic talents to gain money, and he sneaks away from the site with the frog in a box under his arm. After this, the man tries to profit off the frog singing and dancing by putting on shows and trying to sell him to other people. But every time he shows the frog, he just acts like a normal frog, as he only dances for his owner. The man even ends up investing all of his own money into the frog to try to hit it big, but as you see, it all ends up falling flat. The crowd even ends up throwing tomatoes at him. Now, with no money and nowhere left to go, the man sits on a park bench with the frog. Due to the frog singing, a constable overhears and comes over to investigate. The man tries to explain that it was the frog who was singing, and the officer takes the man to the psychopathic ward. That is where we see him sitting in a cell as the frog taunts him. Finally, on the outside, he sees another construction building and thinks, this is how I can finally get rid of the frog. As the man leaves the frog in a box, we transition from the 1950s to the 2050s, as we see another construction worker in the future uncover the box as he was disintegrating the cornerstone. This gives him the idea to sell the frog for profit, starting the cycle anew. A sequel was made in 1995. Chuck Jones reprised Michigan J. Frog in a cartoon titled Another Froggy Evening, with Jeff McCarthy providing the frog's voice. We see the short open 300,000 years ago? 300,000 years? How long has this frog been alive? It says, Michigan is shown to have always existed. Always exist. This man has always been here. Always been here. Even before anything, there was Michigan. Before the Big Bang, there was Michigan. Not only has he been around since the dawn of time, he's been fooling what seems to be the same generation of men since the dawn of time, as he continuously goes about his days just singing. That is until we see him being found in the present day by Marvin the Martian.
At long last, I have captured a perfect specimen.
And Marvin reveals that Michigan speaks Martian. I don't know why that is, but frankly, he's been around since the dawn of time. I don't know why he does whatever he does, but he just does it.
Oh, goody, goody gumdrops. He speaks Martian, too.
Goody goody, I don't have to hear Marvin the Martian anymore, as they go into a duet as the episode ends.
Where toys never cease, and where the rest of the world go wrong.
Alright, now buckle up and get ready, because we're going to go over the inspiration for One Froggy Evening, and it is a wild roller coaster. It starts with the 1994 Columbia Pictures film Once Upon a Time, starring Gary Grant as he finds a dancing caterpillar in a shoebox.
All right, go on, play.
What is it?
We want you to look.
Look at what?
A trained caterpillar.
Trained caterpillar.
Sure.
As you can see, the dancing caterpillar became an inspiration for the dancing frog. We also see that Gary Grant's character became an inspiration for the man trying to exploit this animal.
Was they bothering you, Mr. Flynn? Hmm? Oh, no. No, they just had a dancing caterpillar. Oh. They had a what?
In the Once Upon a Time film, our main character is trying to save a theater by putting on a show with this dancing caterpillar, something that probably inspired the theater gags in One Froggy Evening.
I've lots of playthings, a dolly or two.
Although I haven't watched Once Upon a Time in full, out of the few clips I've seen, I think this movie's a 10 out of 10.
What do you say? Let's go and eat. He danced!
It was common for Warner Bros. To parody scenes from well-known live-action films for Merry Melodies production, so Once Upon a Time was in that ballpark. But Once Upon a Time itself was in turn based on a 1940s radio play called My Client Curly, adapted by Norman Corwin, which itself was adapted from a magazine story written by Lucille Fletcher. And if you thought that was where it ends, we gotta talk about old Rip the Horned Toad, who had been placed in a time capsule in 1897 and discovered in 1928, 31 years later, and went on to become a celebrity in East End County, Texas. And as you can see, he was probably the biggest inspiration for Michigan J, as he is literally a frog who was put in a time capsule and only emerged to become a celebrity, which is also probably what inspired the whole "he lives forever" thing, because he just emerges from his box whenever someone finds him. And if you're thinking that it was too impossible for a toad to have actually be kept in a time capsule for 31 years and still survive, listen to this story. Old Rip the Horned Toad was a Texas horned lizard, commonly referred to as the horned toad or horny toad. Old Rip had supposedly survived a 31-year hibernation as an entombed animal following its exhumation from the Cornerstone in East End, Texas, on February 18, 1928. The lizard became a national celebrity and appeared in motion pictures. Its name was a reference to the American writer Washington Irving's fictional character, Rip Van Winkle. As we can see, Rip Van Winkle became Old Rip the Horned Toad. That's because Rip Van Winkle was a story about a man who had fallen asleep and woken up 20 years later having missed the American Revolution, making his journey similar to the one that the toad is having. That same year, a Texas political delegation led by Senator Earl Mayfield presented the docile lizard to President Calvin Coolidge at the White House for inspection. My man is going up in the world. Following the creature's fame, horned toads were sold in the thousands as souvenirs at public events, including the 1928 Democratic National Convention. The ensuing mass capture and export of horned toads resulted in the genus's abrupt decline in west central Texas and prompted an intervention by the Texas Department of Agriculture. On July 29, 1897, a 4-year-old boy named Will Wood caught a horned toad in East End County, Texas, and originally named him Blinky. His father, an East End County clerk named Ernest E. Wood, decided to test the old West Texas tradition of if a creature could survive 100 years in hibernation. So Ernest took the frog and placed it in the time capsule on July 31st, 1897, only 2 days after his son originally found the toad, and gave his son Will another horned toad. The time capsule in East End County, Texas, held memorabilia including a Bible and a bottle of alcohol. I can only imagine the people opening this time capsule later and seeing a bottle of alcohol, a Bible, and a living toad. Eastland, however, was a town that grew fast, and a newer, bigger courthouse had to be built, and the old one torn down, after only 30 years. Everyone had forgotten about the horned toad, except for Ernest, who told a local newspaper man about it, Boyce House. During the Jazz Age, I guess that's why he got his singing prowess, construction workers began to tear down the old courthouse, and town officials scheduled a public event to open the time capsule in mid-February 1928. That's when Boyce House reported on the forthcoming ceremony in his articles for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. House particularly emphasized the mystery of this horned toad that had been supposedly entombed in the capsule since 1897. As a result of House's sensational article, a crowd of 1,500 spectators gathered in Eastland, Texas. 1,500 spectators. This man had more spectators than I have subscribers. So if you're watching this far into the video, I hope you subscribe, and if you are, comment down below about how insane this is. Many spectators had traveled more than 25 miles to be present to learn about the fate of this horned toad, and hundreds thronged. Thronged? Okay, that's a word. Hundreds gathered around the makeshift fence that encircled the old courthouse, and at exactly 4 o'clock on Saturday, February 18th, 1928, a live horned toad was produced from the time capsule in front of an excited audience. So I don't know why they keep saying allegedly. They literally had a county judge and 3 local clergymen to ensure that no one would try to sneak in a bogus toad. They literally had the toad police out here. A local man at the event announced, "There's a toad." That man happened to be the son-in-law of Ernest E. Wood, the same father who put the toad in there in the first place. So you can't tell me that they swapped a toad in when that frog was uncovered from the time capsule. That baby was alive. But as for a swapped toad, more on that in a moment. Reverend F. E. Singleton, pastor of the Eastland Methodist Church, also exclaimed, "There's a frog." I love the indomitable human spirit. Reverend Singleton handed the creature to Judge Pritchard, who dangled it by its hind leg for all to see. Suddenly, the other leg twitched.
It's alive!
Within days, national newspapers had reported on the story. The New York Times had reported, after the cornerstone was removed, the toad appeared lifeless for some time, but in a little while, it opened its eyes after only 20 minutes and began to breathe. The mouth, however, had appeared to be grown together, and efforts were made to give the toad food and water, and even surgery to open the mouth if necessary. Following the newspaper reports, zoologists and other scientists began to publicly debate over whether a Texas horned lizard could survive such an extended period of time without water, sunlight, or oxygen. Dr. Raymond L. Ditmars, curator of mammals and reptiles at the Bronx Zoo, declared the alleged survival of the Texas lizard utterly impossible. In contrast, naturalist William T. Homaday, the curator of New York Zoology Gardens, asserted that the incident was possible and gave an instance of his own experience in Ceylon. Indifferent to the scientific debate, Eastland locals instead ascribed the toad's miraculous survival in the 31 years to the presence of the Bible in the time capsule. You gotta love those Eastland locals. Jesus was watching over the toad. Due to extensive media coverage, Old Rip became a national celebrity. The docile lizard was transported to Dallas, Texas, for public exhibition by none other than Will Wood, the same boy who had found the toad in 1897. They had been reunited after all these years. After public outcry by Eastland inhabitants and profit-hungry business people over removing the famous creature from the otherwise nondescript and insignificant town, Wood had returned Old Rip to Eastland. Dallas exhibitors had then sued Wood for $6,000, equivalent to $109,872 in 2024, for alleged breach of contract. After this incident, Old Rip went on national tour. He had over 40,000 spectators viewing him at the Zoology Gardens in St. Louis, Missouri. This man truly was hitting it big with 40,000 spectators. Later that same year in New York City, motion pictures were produced with Will Wood introducing Old Rip, and the bug catcher was paid 50 cents, equivalent to $9.16 in 2024, for each of the insects that the frog devoured to please the cameraman. This frog is a money printing machine. Soon after his national tour, Rip died of pneumonia on January 19, 1929. After Old Rip's death, the specimen was kept in a tiny satin-lined casket provided by the National Casket Company, burying him in that good stuff I see, and displayed in the lobby of the new Eastland Courthouse. Decades later, in September 1961, Old Rip was stolen from the museum exhibit, and a ransom note demanded $10,000, equivalent to $105,223 in 2024, for his return. But after a citywide search, the specimen was recovered. A year later, in 1962, John Connolly visited the courthouse, and while running for governor of Texas at a public event, Connolly had lifted the creature by the hind leg abruptly, and it detached, leaving Old Rip with only 3 legs.
Look how they massacred my boy.
Sometime between 1971 and 1973, multiple sources are conflicting on this, but what is true is that Rip was stolen again. But soon after, the city of Eastland claimed that they had somehow found the stolen specimen and returned him to exhibition. However, the museum visitors had noted that the recovered toad had implicitly had 4 feet, while the original had 3 feet. After the initial snap in 1962. One thing that was different about this kidnapping was that the kidnapper had supposedly wanted the confession out of those who had created the myth of this horned toad. He demanded that accomplices come forward in taking part in the hoax. The thief even claimed that he was one of the original party members who was in on the hoax and wanted everyone else to come out.
Oh no, this can't be.
No one had come forward, and after no ransom was paid, a letter claiming that Old Rip could be found at the local fairgrounds was found, and Rip's body was found unharmed, but as I mentioned, he had a few changes. In 1976, an anonymous letter was sent to newspapers claiming that the original 3-footed Rip was still in the thief's possession, and the city of Eastland had replaced the original specimen with a fake. Angry that the city of Eastland was building in the future around a dried up horned toad was what the thief claimed. The same letter that the thief sent in offered to pay $5,000, equivalent to $27,629 in 2024, to anyone that could prove that the toad in the courthouse was truly Old Rip. And finally, after all of that history, I can finally show off my very own Michigan J. As you can see, he's got his top hat and cane. We got some squiggles in the background. I don't know why they put that there. We got some pieces of wood. We got a box. We got the green floor all blended nicely. The outline of the character gives him a bold, standout design. And I don't know if you knew this or not, but I like frogs. Frogs are just some cool, dapper dudes. We need to put more frogs in media. Just include more frogs everywhere. They just make things better. I also didn't think that this video would be so long. I thought it was just going to be a quick 5-minute video, but here I am 15 to 20 minutes later. Michigan J just is one of the most iconic frogs, and I had to paint him. He is just so iconic. He's the first frog you think of when you think of the singing, dancing frog. I put a lot of effort, not only into this painting, but into making this video. I didn't expect it to be so long as I said, but he has such a history. Such a wild, long, crazy history. So if you like that and you like more content like this, make sure you subscribe. I'll see you next time.